Good morning. We are on the bottom of Kuf Beis Amud Aleph. We're back to the Gemara. So the Gemara went on a tangent a little bit, discussing eating in the place of your bracha, and when moving away from where this place where you ate constitutes an interruption, upending your original bracha. Well, not upending, I shouldn't say, but requiring you to make a new bracha, considering it's a new meal. And we went through the halacha of this, of the details, and so on. Now, this all came up because we were discussing the laws of Kiddush. And when we discussed the laws of Kiddush, we discussed the requirement to eat in the spot of one's Kiddush. So eating in the spot of one's Kiddush, which kind of gives us an idea of what it means to walk away from a bracha, led us to, well, what happens if you walk away from the bracha over your food? But our original discussion is really back to Kiddush, right? Which itself came up. Why did Kiddush itself come up? Because we're talking about not eating before either Shabbos or Pesach or Yom Tif in preparation for the meal that's going to come, right? Right, that's where it started from, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's why Kiddush came up.
Pesach had some stringencies, right?
Right, that's correct. That's right.
Shabbos.
Now that itself led us to Kiddush. How did that itself lead us to Kiddush? Because as we're going to see, well, because there was some opinion that said that on, let's say, not Pesach, Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, there was a dispute where you can keep on eating Friday afternoon and either stop when it's time to make Kiddush,
right,
or continue your meal, make Kiddush when you're done, or option 3, which we said was the halacha, Shmuel, in the middle of your meal, you cover the bread and make a Kiddush on the spot. Right? That's where where it came to.
Yep.
Because we said Pesach, you have to stop ordering earlier, but there's a dispute whether that extends to other Shabbos and Yom Tif. And then we learned that the halacha is you may eat on Shabbos. On Erev Shabbos. So now, if you're eating Erev Shabbos and you keep on going until Shabbos starts, what do you do now? Do you keep on eating and then when you finish make Kiddush, or do you make Kiddush, or do you stop your meal and make Kiddush now, or do you pause your meal, make Kiddush in your meal, and continue your meal?
I think
that was the halacha. Poitus mapa, you cover the bread and make Kiddush on the spot, the middle of your meal, really.
That doesn't.
That's where we are, right?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Pesach, that was more stringent.
So Pesach, none of this applies.
None of this applies.
Yes,
right.
but now
we went on the tangent.
Correct. That's correct. So now we're coming back to this, and it actually is going to lead to something that's necessary for Pesach. Backward. Because what we're going to learn now is, so you're in your meal as Shabbos begins, and before we get to the halachic view, which is you cover your bread and make Kiddush, which was introduced by Shmuel, we're going back to the Mishnaic era, in which we had Rabbi Yossi, which said either you complete your meal, make Kiddush when you're done, Rabbi Yossi's view, even though it's sometime after Shabbos started, or Rabbi Yehuda's view, which said no, once Shabbos starts, you got to stop your meal right now and make Kiddush. Not cover your bread, you have to stop now and make Kiddush. Right? Now, when you do that, you have two brachas over which you can be holding a cup. Your Kiddush bracha, because you're starting Shabbos now, and your brachas hamazon, your benching bracha, because you're concluding a meal. Now, can you or can you not combine two brachas into one cup of wine?
So I'm sorry, is this a case? So you're saying this is the opinion where you have to stop your meal? Let's
just assume that. We're going to get to more details. But sorry.
Right.
Or let's say Rabbi Yossi's view, where you finish your meal, then you make Kiddush. So now you have to bench and make Kiddush, or whatever, maybe the order's the other way around. But either way, you have two brachas, Kiddush and benching, both of which one can hold a cup, or should hold a cup, to recite that blessing over. A koshel bracha. Can I do both of those holding one cup of wine? Or does each bracha require its own cup of wine? Now, how is that going to lead us to to Pesach, because Pesach, on the Seder night when you make Kiddush, if the Seder night is Motzoi Shabbos, then you're making Havdalah and Kiddush on one cup. And that is going to be juxtaposed to whether or not we can make benching and Kiddush on one cup. And this is the famous Yak Nahaz. Yain, Kiddush, Ner, Havdalah, and Zman. The 5 brachas you would be making on one Kiddush, on one ceremony, on one cup, if it were to be Yom Tiv Motzei Shabbos. Seder night being Motzei Shabbos. And that's going to become a big discussion, which we'll look up the halacha for that, because that's relevant to us. And perhaps the halachas of the Kiddush and the benching, that will come up when we get to the end and we learn all the halachas of Kiddush all together. Right, that's in one siman, Reish Ayin Aleph, which discusses chapter 271 of the Shulchan Aruch, which discusses all the laws of Kiddush. We'll get to that when we get much later, right? Because we're going to keep on coming back to Kiddush and going in tangents. So we're going to be looking up the halacha of these tangents. But then when we get to the end, we'll look up all the halachas of Kiddush. That's kind of going to be our strategy going forward. There's going to be a little halachas of Havdalah as well, but we're not going to do that because the primary discussion of Havdalah is not really here. It's elsewhere. We'll do a little bit. Okay, let's see. So having given that little introduction as to where we are in the Gemara. So it's Kuf Beis Amud Aleph, 102a, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines from the bottom of the page, third to last word. Tan Rabban, sages taught. B'nei Chad Bura, members of a group, Shaimush Mesubin, they were, Mesubin literally means like lounging, right? They were leaning. Haseba, that's this terminology. They were sitting on those divans, those Roman divans. They're having a meal. The Kiddush alei mayom, and the day became holy upon them. The sun set, Shabbos starts. So, Mevi'in loy, they bring him, the leader, presumably, Kais shal yain, a cup of wine. V'omer of Kedushas hayom, and he says now, Kedushas hayom, he proclaims now over that cup the holiness of the day, otherwise known as Kiddush. He recites the Kiddush. Yeah, Rashi says, in the middle of his meal. So the meal's not over yet, but he makes Kiddush. But this is not like Shmuel, which said, cover your bread, make Kiddush, uncover your bread and continue. Because it says here, Visheni, and a second cup, Omer la Baruch Samaz, and he benches on the spot. Because you have to end your meal now, considering Shabbos started. And you made Kiddush. David Rabbi Huda, this is the opinion of Rabbi Huda. Rabbi Huda, he says that when Shabbos starts in the middle of your meal, you got to end your meal. Because you need to make Kiddush. But funnily enough, you're making Kiddush first and then benching, ending your meal. And then your Berch Samazon, I suppose, covers your Kiddush as well. Right, so you have to end, sorry? That's a good question. Rashi changes the version and says that's 1 cup, yeah.
In both cases.
No, sorry, no, it's 2 cups. I'm sorry. Rashi just make sure to keep the order. There's an opinion which reverses the order, that that's benching first and then Kiddush. But Rashi says keep it this way. Kiddush comes first, because the moment Kiddush comes, you have to make Kiddush.
Second cup.
But then a second cup to bench, because you also have to end your meal now.
And that's the opinion of Rabbi
Yehuda. That's right. See, Rashbam has a different version.
So I guess there's one question of whether or not you were to make Kiddush first and then bench, or because the meal had... No,
Rashi and Rashbam both agree. You make Kiddush first because time for Kiddush came, but you also have to end your meal because time for Kiddush came.
Right. No, okay.
So you make Kiddush and then end your meal. But it seems like it's 2 cups. Rabbi Yossi says, you're allowed to continue going and eating until you're done, as long as you want, right? That's his opinion. Until your meal is finished, as you wish. Right, as we learned earlier, Rabbi Yossi says you don't have to stop your meal. Now, Gomru.
Does he cover it?
Say again?
Does he cover it? The bread?
No. Keep on going.
Oh, no. For that, no, I know for that.
In Rabbi Yossi's view, you don't cover. You keep on going.
For the reason of you usually cover bread when you make kiddush.
You don't make kiddush yet, according to Rabbi Yossi. You make kiddush when you're done your meal.
Oh, he doesn't make kiddush.
No,
okay.
not yet.
Oh, he just continues.
Keeps on going his meal. Finished until you're done.
And then do kiddush.
Now, Gomru, top of cook base on the base, top of 102b, Gomru, he finishes his meal. The first cup that comes to him, and he benches. Because in Rabbi Yossi's view, you don't need to stop your meal the second kiddush is over. So you're certainly not required to make kiddush before you bench. In Rabbi Huda's view, why is Rabbi Huda telling you to stop your meal now? Because in Rabbi Huda's view, when kiddush time arrives, you may not do anything else but make kiddush. So make kiddush first, and then end your meal with brachas hamazon. In Rabbi Yossi's view, you don't need to stop the second kiddush comes. You'll make kiddush later. Okay, so finish your meal, bench like a mensch, and then make kiddush after. So besides the dispute as to whether you'll have to stop your meal or continue your meal, it also tells you which one comes first, kiddush or benching. If you're told you have to stop your meal the second kiddush arrives, kiddush comes first, because kiddush arrives, you're going to make kiddush. Yehuda's view. But in Rabbi Yossi's view, where you're allowed to continue your meal even after kiddush time arrived, you bench first and then make kiddush. Vasheni, in the second cup, you make kiddush. Clear?
Yeah, so this is also indicating to us that determine whether kiddush takes priority in terms of its timing when it comes in.
Yeah. That will also tell you whether kiddush comes before benching or not.
Right.
If we're prioritizing the second time for kiddush arrives, make kiddush, then you make kiddush first and then bench because your meal is over.
But it could also be you stop. You can also pause your meal.
Oh.
Because there's two issues going on.
That's a good point. Right? So now, exactly. So you're getting to the point here. There's two different issues here. Right. One is the fact that the moment kiddush arrives, you have to make kiddush. Question A. And question B is, does making kiddush mean you have to stop your meal?
Right.
Clearly, according to Yehuda, making kiddush means you have to stop your meal. Okay. So now, Shmuel, which said, cover your bread, make kiddush, and then continue your meal. In whose view is he following? Yehuda or Rabbi Yossi? It's not quite clear. If Rashbam clarifies for us and says, actually, Shmuel derives from Rabbi Yossi. And it's exactly for the reason you just said. Because there's two different issues here. One is, do you need to make kiddush the moment that your kiddush time arrives? And B is, does making kiddush mean your meal is over?
Right.
In Rabbi Yossi's view, you certainly don't have to make kiddush the moment or kiddush arrives. You can make it when you're done.
Right.
And also, but did Rabbi Yossi say that making kiddush ends your meal? Not necessarily. Rabbi Huda said making kiddush ends your meal, and therefore once you make kiddush, you got to follow it by benching right away. But Rabbi Yossi, you said wait till you're done your meal, then bench, and then make kiddush. But what happens if I reverse it? I make kiddush before I benched. Does that kiddush ipso facto end my meal? Rabbi Yossi wasn't clear about that, and therefore says Rashbam, Shmuel, which said cover your bread and make kiddush in the middle and continue, is actually following Rabbi Yossi's view. And therefore Rabbi Yossi would have said here that had you covered your bread, made kiddush, and continued your meal, that would have been even better because you made kiddush the moment kiddush came. Yeah. But you don't have to. And if you kept on going your meal, bench first and then make kiddush. That's how Rashbam learns Shmuel's view. Because again, Shmuel is not a scholar from the Mishnaic age. He's a scholar from the Gemara age. And in the Mishnaic era, we have no precedent for this idea of covering the bread and making kiddush in the middle. We only have either Rabbi Huda, which said end your meal now, or Rabbi Yossi, which said keep on going and eating.
But not about the order of when kiddush.
Also about the order. But we don't have Rabbi Yossi clearly stating that making kiddush mid-meal ends your meal. Rabbi Huda says it does. Because Rabbi Huda says, A, the moment kiddush comes, make kiddush. B, the fact that you just make kiddush ends your meal and now bench right after. But Rabbi Yossi says, keep on eating, and when you're done, bench and make kiddush. Does that mean? So that tells us that you don't need to make kiddush the moment kiddush time arrives. Because you can finish your meal, bench, and then make kiddush. But what's Rabbi Yossi's view on making kiddush in middle? Does that end your meal?
I think it alludes to that you need to stop at present moment, make kiddush, and then you can continue.
Okay, Rabbi Yossi doesn't say so explicitly. Rabbi Yossi says, enjoy your meal till you're done, then bench, then make kiddush. Right? Which means, we're trying to figure out how Shmuel fits into the dispute between Rabbi Huda and Rabbi Yossi.
Right.
Because he can't disagree with both of them.
No, for sure.
Right? So
Okay.
he cannot be in Rabbi Huda's view, because Rabbi Huda says the moment you make Kiddush, your meal is ended.
Right, no.
So clearly it can't be Rabbi Huda. But how could it be Rabbi Yossi? Because Rabbi Yossi said you can continue your meal, then bench, and then make Kiddush. So
those are two polar opposites.
Correct. But so now on question A, as to whether you have to make Kiddush the moment Kiddush arrives, Rabbi Yossi clearly says the answer is no. You can continue your meal.
Yeah, okay.
But is he saying you have to continue your meal? What would he say on the question of, does Kiddush in the mid-meal end your meal? No comment. And Yehuda said Kiddush in the middle of your meal ends your meal. And therefore, the moment Kiddush arrives, right? Yehuda has two opinions here. A, the moment Kiddush arrives, you might make Kiddush. B, the moment you make Kiddush, your meal ends. And therefore, his conclusion is make Kiddush and bench the moment Kiddush arrives. But Rabbi Yossi said, keep on eating, then bench, then make Kiddush. Okay, so clearly he says, you don't need to make Kiddush the moment Kiddush arrives. But what's his view on whether Kiddush ends your meal? No comment. And this is where Shmuel comes and says, Rabbi Yossi is saying, you may continue your meal until later, and then bench and make Kiddush. But should you wish to make Kiddush earlier, go make Kiddush earlier. Cover the bread, make Kiddush earlier, and it doesn't end your meal. Because he disagrees with on both accounts. A, he disagrees that you don't need to make Kiddush the moment Kiddush arrives. And B, he disagrees and says, Kiddush doesn't end your meal. But that second point is not explicit. This is Shmuel deriving from or learning into Rabbi Yossi as per the way Rashbam explains it. And in fact, this is preferable because now you're at least gaining that you're making Kiddush right away. Even though you don't have to, it's certainly a plus. So this is how the Rashbam learns Shmuel into the dispute of Rabbi Huda and Rabbi Yossi. Because until this point, it seemed like it was Rabbi Huda on one side, Rabbi Yossi on the other, and Shmuel came with his own solution that was not really no precedent in the Mishnaic era, and almost seemed contradictory actually to both opinions. But now that we've split the dispute into two questions, whether Kiddush ends your meal, A, B, do you have to make Kiddush right away? Now that we split that, we can say the dispute between Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Huda is on two questions. Do you have to make Kiddush right away? And does Kiddush end your meal? And then split the difference and say, hey, you don't need to make Kiddush right away, but you could make Kiddush right away, and it doesn't end your meal. And therefore cover the bread, make Kiddush, keep on going. So this is how Rashbam takes Shmuel and learns it into Rabbi Yossi. Well, okay. Okay, so we'll stop over here. And tomorrow the Gemara is going to ask, why is both Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Huda requiring 2 cups, one for Kiddush, one for benching? Whichever order they, right? In Rabbi Huda's view, first Kiddush, then benching right at the moment Kiddush arrives. Or in Rabbi Yossi's view, you decided to skip making Kiddush in the middle and you decided to wait for Kiddush after. You make benching and then Kiddush. Why can't you just use 1 cup for both?
And the reasoning is because the argument is because you can do that for Havdalah.
That's what the Gemara is going to say. The Gemara is going to say, well, you don't want to mix mitzvahs together. To which the Gemara rejoins and says, well, hey, you're mixing Kiddush and Havdalah together. To which the Gemara says, well, Kiddush and Havdalah is one theme. Benching and Kiddush is not the same theme. And from there we get into a whole discussion of how you structure your Kiddush and Havdalah when the two combine together. And that's when we'll look into the halacha regarding that, especially as it pertains to the Seder night. Okay, wonderful day, Yidden.